Welcome back. Dawn Trail had a lot of fun little FF9 nods to it, without outright feeling like a complete ripoff. There was no Queen Braun equivalent, and they renamed both Garnet and Steiner as an example. Also, I know I said I wanted this done months ago, but I'm hoping to be able to get the video out by the end of this year, if not by the end of fall. But I'm glad I took the extra time to write and record this. When I originally played it, the game kept crashing at the end, which was apparently caused by the Moguri mod. But there was a patch that not only fixed that, but added other nice UI adjustments. Also, this being the 25th anniversary, Square released a bunch of new merch, but no news on a remake yet. And this is, in fact, a Zillennia, no matter what the crazy virus says. If you came across this video without seeing part 1 first, I suggest you go check that one out. But for a very quick refresher, Disc 2 ended with the party coming back to Alexandria with the fallen Braun in tow. And that's how Disc 2 ended. Now, on to the start of Disc 3. And surprisingly, that was sarcasm by the way, Disc 3 starts up right where we left off. Everyone is back at Alexandria, but the party is split up doing their own thing. Garnet and Steiner are at the castle with Beatrix and Dr. Tot to prepare Garnet to take the throne. Meanwhile, Zidane is moping at the bar, and he hasn't talked to his Tantalus friends, so they leave to go check out Ruby's mini-theater she set up while they were away. And I might be overthinking this, but I never noticed until now how similar this is to something that happens later, so let's remember this until then. But on the way there, Blank runs into Vivi, who fills him and the player in on what happened between discs. And when you are done checking out the town and checking in on Sakuna dealing with rowdy customers, Vivi finds himself at Ruby's theater. Kinda fitting how we're starting both parts as Vivi exploring the city before going to see a Tantalus play. And this is just a tutorial, it doesn't count. Back at the castle, Garnet tells Steiner before Dr. Tot and Beatrix arrive that she wishes to see Zidane again, but that's just not possible. And the princess needs to get changed, but before the boys leave, Tot gives Garnet the magical stones containing the power that was taken from her back in Disc 1. And with Zidane, Vivi, and Garnet accounted for, we now get to catch up with what Aiko was up to and her quest to win Zidane's heart with a romantic letter. Running into Dr. Tot, she asks him for help because he seems smart, who agrees, and likely partially because she has a horn which triggers a memory about when Garnet first arrived in Alexandria. Once the letter is finished, Aiko introduces herself and runs off, but almost instantly gets ran into by Baku, causing her to get flung over the railing, leaving the task of delivering the letter to the Tantalus leader. And it's a good thing Baku knows Zidane, because Aiko doesn't explain anything about him. Though, she could probably assume he does because he agrees without asking who that is. But he almost instantly drops the letter after an argument with Steiner, so this letter is never reaching its intended recipient. Cutting back to Zidane, he says that he misses Garnet. And then he asks Baku if he can rejoin Tantalus, but is rejected because he can't even capture a canary. Thanks to that, and Vivi asking if they can, the pair agree to go see Garnet one last time before she becomes queen. On the way there, Zidane has to break up a fight between Freya and Amarant. Because let's be real, the guards wouldn't be able to stop these two. In Forest Troubles, Zidane gets a mouthful from the former for wandering around and not having any new information on Kuja, because she thinks Kuja will come back for Garnet if he was the one behind taking her summons, so Zidane should be around to protect her. But Zidane's logic is that the castle guards will be enough, which would probably be true if this wasn't a JRPG. But Zidane is forgetting one crucial thing. It's not about if he is needed, it's about if he is wanted. At the castle's door, Steiner is throwing Aiko out as the party walks up. And after introductions, he agrees to arrange a meeting because Vivi asked. And here we have another funny graphical thing. We can see Garnet on the other side of the door in the blackness of the HD void. And when she comes out, Zidane can't say anything, but Aiko runs up the stairs to exchange jewels as a symbol of their friendship. Vivi asks why Zidane didn't say anything to her. And he wanted to, but he didn't want to lie to her. Because obviously he wants to stay by her side. Later that night, Aiko realizes she has no chance, which is good because she's 6 lol. But still expecting him to show up, she runs off to hide. But the letter has been passed around like a cheap... Well, let's not go there, there's kids around. What I mean to say is that basically everyone has seen the letter, but both Steiner and Beatrix thinks that the other wrote it for them, and the two are about to have a nice moment until Baku shows up and ruins it. Back at the bar, Dr. Tot wants to ask Aiko some questions about her home, and she says sure, but to do it at his place, which happens to be in Treno. And while she likely wants to travel to get away from Zidane, he shows up and wants to come along too to take part in the Triple Triad, Tetramaster tournament. At Treno, Aiko wants to drag Vivi around to explore the city, and it's also the last day to register for the card tournament, so questions about the Summoner Village must wait until later. Todd is also apparently a really good player, so if you need help, you can get it here. Before registering, we can explore around the city and partake in some optional activities, like fight the monster in the basement of the equipment shop, turn in any extra Zodiac coins you've collected, or participate in the auction house for some rare items. Gonna slowly back away from this old lady. And we're also pretty broke, so getting the rare stuff from the auction is out. So after trading in our coins, all that's left to do is what we came here to do. The Triple Triad. Friday Night Tetramaster. I was intentionally leaving out describing Tetramaster until now, since it's required by the story. To begin with, this game is played on a 4x4 square grid, with some of the squares blocked by rocks, preventing players from using them, and further making each game unique with an ever-changing layout. From there, players take turns placing down cards one at a time in an attempt to capture the opponent's cards. Each player makes a hand of 5 cards from their collection, like Triple Triad. But unlike Triple Triad, the same card can have different stats. These stats are broken down into 2 main categories. First, a card may have an arrow on any of the sides or corners for a maximum of 8 arrows. These signify which direction a card can attack or defend against an opponent's card. To capture an opponent's card, you must place a card with an arrow pointed towards the opponent's card. If the opponent's card doesn't have an arrow pointing back to your card, it is automatically captured. If it does, then the second category of stats comes into play. These are the card's attack power, which ranges from 0 to 9, and then A to F. The type of attack: P for physical, M for magical, X for targeting the lower of the card's 2 defenses, and A for targeting the lowest value of the card across all values. And then naturally, you have the defenses, 1 for physical and 1 for magical. Like attack power, these range from 0 to 9, and then A to F. And then I never realized that the last 2 digits on a card were separate parameters until this playthrough when I looked it up. So, now that we can read the card's stats, if you place your card with an arrow pointing against an opponent's card with an arrow pointing back to yours, then combat starts. Attack and defense values are calculated by assigning a random value of HP based on the number or letter on the card, with each value having a 15-digit range, so a 0 is randomly assigned a number between 0 and 15 when combat starts, and a 1 is assigned a number between 16 and 31, and so on. Once the hit points of both cards are calculated, a second random value is calculated between 0 and the attacker's hit points, and then this new value is subtracted from its hit points, and whoever has the higher value remaining is the winner. Due to the random nature of the values, even if you have a maxed out card and fight one that is straight zeros, you can still lose, in an unlikely but still possible outcome. Finally, at the end of combat, if any arrows on the defeated card point to other cards, you will combo capture those as well. At the end of the game, the winner takes 1 card from their opponent that was captured, but if you manage to capture all of their cards, you get a perfect victory and can take them all. But why would you want to collect all of these cards? In Final Fantasy VIII, you could turn monsters into cards and then deconstruct the cards into powerful items to power up your party. But in this game, all it does is contribute to your collector rating, which increases not only by how many unique cards you have, but also how many different arrow patterns are on your cards, and finally upgrading them all to the combat type of A. The end reward for all of this is, of course,
nothing! Absolutely nothing!
Yeah, that's right. It's just for pride and accomplishment. And according to the wiki, which I'm trusting because I don't play enough Tetramaster to have ever seen this, but your cards can level up and grow stronger through repeat use and victories. As for the tournament itself, it has 2 matches that you have to win so you can challenge the champion, a cutie in a sailor outfit. So, hope you have gathered some good cards in your travels, either from random battles, challenging NPCs, or talking to Tot. At least these matches are broken up by optional Amaranth backstory. But with the qualifiers down, all that's left is the champion, and we get a meta warning from the judge saying that we only have 1 shot to win, so we should probably save the game. And how nice that the tournament runs on our time. But when we decide to start the match, the champ only uses Oglop cards because the champion is actually Sid and not Aaron. Winning this match nets you the Rebirth Ring, and Sid reveals that the Hildegard 2 is working. It's slow, but it works without Mist. And it's a good thing too, because Aiko shows up and informs everyone that something is happening in Alexandria, where Kuja has indeed come back to wax poetic about Garnet's ascension, and his gift for the castle is to summon Bahamut to attack the town. And once the attack begins, there's a strange minigame where Garnet has to give the Knights of Pluto specific tasks. And I have no idea how to do this correctly. And I'm guessing there is, because afterwards I am rewarded with a singular high potion. I can assume the soldiers will say something special if they are doing the correct task, but that's about it. More importantly, Garnet is questioning her ability to lead when she's by herself, and seemingly collapses as something begins to glow, probably an Eidolon. But regardless of whether the future queen acts or not, the siege on the city will still continue, so it's up to Beatrix and Steiner to protect the citizens. However, there are too many monsters, and Beatrix suggests that they retreat back to the castle, but Steiner vows to protect everyone in Alexandria, including Beatrix. In thinking that this will be the end, Steiner wishes to confess his feelings, but Beatrix assures him that they will see another day. And for this final battle, Steiner starts off in trance. But what makes this entire segment peak is the track that plays in the background, Something to Protect. Steiner might be a goofball and the comic relief character, but he's honestly a good person and a proper knight. I'm glad he gets his moment to shine. He deserves this. Back with Garnet, she comes to at some point in the future, and I don't think this is after Steiner and Beatrix's outing with the Mist Monsters because they are nowhere to be seen. I also think that them fighting the Mist Monsters was longer than the 15 to 20 minutes it is during the game. But she was laying down, so consciousness was lost for at least some time. But now that she's awake, she follows the sound of music to the top of the castle. And at the top of the castle, Garnet thinks about what her mother or Zidane would do, or at least wishing that they were there to assure her, but she realizes that as queen, it is up to her to protect the kingdom. At this point, the party finally returns to Alexandria, and Aiko does this to meet up with Garnet faster than anyone else. And now with the 2 summoners and all 4 summoner jewels together, they are able to summon the holy Eidolon, Alexander. But this was Kuja's plan all along, using Bahamut to bait out an even stronger Eidolon to take control of for some reason. But someone else is fed up with Kuja going against his original mission, and he also lumps in Zidane for still unknown reasons. Kuja is quick to figure out that the man who's named Garland...
Chaos.
No, not that one.
Bullshit.
Came to Gaia himself and took back control of his ship, the Invincible, while the party safely lands their airship and begins looking for Garnet and Aiko. And just in case Kuja destroys the castle, Zidane asks for everyone else to leave and he'll go grab the two girls himself. And good thing he did, because only moments later, the Invincible attacks both Alexander and the castle, damaging both. With Zidane arriving just in time for Garnet to grab onto him and the two have a more than friends embrace, which makes Aiko give this very upsetty spaghetti face. With all of their feet mostly safe on the ground, Zidane apologizes for not being honest with her earlier, and she just nods her head with a "It's okay." And as a parting gift from Garland, he finishes off the Eidolon and the castle in order to further his plan of siphoning souls so they can't return to Gaia. A circulating stream of life in the form of souls. That sounds kind of familiar. Garland also implies Kuja's fate was to spend his remaining days on Gaia, and that his own fate is to face Kuja's counterpart.
A little while later,
we find ourselves back in Lindblom in the guest room, where Blank shows up, and when we ask about Garnet, he says she's probably upstairs, so time to run up there. And now that we aren't under attack, Zidane tries to talk to Garnet, but she only communicates in squall, which causes Zidane to think he did something wrong, but she just shakes her head. In thinking that his attempts to cheer her up are annoying, he decides it's probably best to give her some space. But based on her body language here, and in the last FMV, we don't even need to see her inner thoughts to know that she's not mad at our not saying. Which is a great detail, that even as a PS1 game, Square convey emotion through body language. Coming down from the telescope, we go to the conference room where everyone is waiting to have a meeting with Sid. Well, everyone except Garnet, obviously, and Aiko when she runs off to get her fellow summoner. Before the meeting starts, however, we have a forced ATE where Garnet blames herself for the destruction of Alexandria, and if she did things differently, maybe things would have turned out alright. But no, Kuja still would have talked Braun into taking out Garnet's Eidolons and used them to wage war on the Mist Continent. And she still would have betrayed Kuja at the Life Tree, letting him take control of Bahamut. The only difference is that when Kuja does attack Alexandria, there would be no Aiko to help summon Alexander. And not being friends with the party would make it impossible to bring Kuja to justice, if of course Garnet didn't die to the attack on the city first. As for the meeting, the party tries to figure out what Kuja's plans are now that he's caused a large-scale destruction on all 4 of the major cities. But Zidane doesn't care and just wants to bring the fight to him, but has no plan. But Sid does bring up that Kuja not only had the stolen Hildegard 1, but his crew were talking black mages. I'm not sure how Sid knew that they talked, but a hint is a hint. We'll need an airship to look for Kuja, but the Hildegard 2 needs repairs, and Sid can't make a new airship as an Oglop. But if he was a man, however... At this point, Tot shows up, but before he can diagnose the situation, Aiko runs in saying she thinks Garnet lost her voice, where Sid pauses this meeting so the gang can go check on the Queen. Dr. Tot presumes this is just a trauma response and will clear itself up eventually, but can't give a proper time frame because it's something only Garnet herself can get over. At least with the comfort that it's not life-threatening. We can go back to see the Regent, where it's revealed that only the caster of the spell can reverse its effects. However, there is a long-shot option. If we can find 3 different potions and mix them, it might just change Sid back without needing Hilda. And although the ingredients were common in the past, they have since fallen out of favor. But Cinna probably has one of the three, and hopefully we can find the other two in Lindblom. So time to go talk to people around town. Firstly, we go talk to the artist, who says he doesn't know if he has it, but he doesn't care if we take it if we find it. Strange potion acquired. And while we're still in the theater district, might as well hit up Tantalus. Unusual potion acquired. Finally, asking around the business district, one of the shopkeepers has what we're looking for, and since it's too old to sell, she just gives it away. Beautiful potion acquired. Giving the pre-mixed potions a Sid, and, well... it sort of worked? Sid is now a toad. Ribbit. So, the alchemy was a bust, but at least Sid kept his glorious stash. So now our only recourse is to find and bring Hilda home. And Sid says that we can use the boat they took from Alexandria. And because Kuja has talking black mages with them, Vivi brings up the great idea to go check out their village. Upon boarding the ship, we finally meet back up with Quina, who has been absent from the party since Medain Suri. Sid also asked Blank to tag along and guard the ship while we were off doing our thing. And, maybe having Sid here isn't the best idea. And man, it takes about 20 hours for the full party to come together at the same time, compared to like Final Fantasy VII, where the last mandatory party member joins you in Rocket Town back in Disc 1. At first glance, it seems like the village is deserted, but at the cemetery, Vivi finds the village leader, number 288. Everyone except him and a pair of black mages looking after the chocobo left because they discovered what death is, and believe that Kuja can extend their lives. But 288 thinks that they might just be puppets, but also won't betray his fellow black mages and give up their location. But he specifically says them and not Kuja, so 288 is exercising free will, which refutes his comment about how they were just created to serve humans.
A man chooses. A slave obeys.
But given his negative outlook on life, I understand why he doesn't recognize this himself. But maybe the other two black mages can give us some information. After seeing the chocobo hatchling at the shack, the two black mages feel love, although they have no idea what this feeling is. The leader returns to check in on the chocobo. And Vivi realizes that if he were a puppet, he wouldn't be able to feel sadness. And Vivi having these experiences lets him tell 288 what I had just said, and so he finally tells us that Kuja's base is off to the east, under the quicksand. On the way to Kuja's base, we find antlions guarding the quicksand, so now I can talk about the gameplay implications of Garnet's trauma. Not only is her transpar gone, but occasionally her concentration will be lost, which means she does nothing for the turn. And now, I like how the narrative affects the gameplay, but it brings into question what silence means as a status effect. Because Garnet has no voice, but she can still cast just fine, which is kind of a nitpicky observation, but oh well. I do think they should have taken the extra step and also just locked out her spells, especially because of the next dungeon, which we'll get to shortly. But if this gameplay gimmick bothers you, the Moguri mod can disable it, although I'd still advocate for getting the intended experience at least once. But whether or not your Garnet can concentrate, we have to make it to Kuja's base. It's a trap. The party gets separated from Zidane and Sid, and Kuja comes in through the loudspeaker to blackmail us to get something for him. So obviously we're gonna call him on his bluff. If he drops her friends, he'll lose all of his leverage, and Kuja's evil, not stupid. Wait, Zidane, why are you agreeing to help? Well, decisions have been made, and Zidane heads up to meet Kuja, while Sid stays behind to look after the party. Kuja needs Zidane to go to someplace called Oilvert and collect some stone for him. He can't go because of the anti-magic field.
How the hell does that work? How does it work, you may be asking? How? With science, of course!
And as he says, we are too stupid to use magic. But he is gracious enough to lend us his airship, and lets us go with a full party, and also gives us a hint about one of the enemies. Kuja could have dropped us off a little closer to the destination, but I do like that instead of the normal world map theme playing, it is Kuja's theme to make sure that you know who is in control here. And continuing with peak music choices, when we leave the world map and reach Oilvert's front door, the music changes to the main theme, but it sounds more, I want to say, hollow or maybe deserted. Here, listen to the two side by side. Before going inside, make sure to buy a healing rod if you don't already have one, and bring Garnet. The gimmick to this dungeon is as expected, magic cannot be used. And this is what I was talking about before about Garnet's magic. It would make sense to bring her here because she wouldn't be impacted by the gimmick, and you would still want to bring Garnet or Aiko to throw potions around to heal, or use auto potion. And this is why I said to buy the healing rod. It allows Garnet to heal whatever she physically attacks. Also, there's this epitaph enemy that will create a clone of one of the main characters.
Because I'm you. No, I'm me. I'm me, he says.
And these clones can attack the original for max damage, and this is what Kuja was hinting at earlier. But we should probably hurry up and get the stupid stone. There's no telling how long until Kuja decides to go back on his word. Taking this elevator down to the deepest part of the ruins, we find the stone, because where else would it be? And surprise, surprise, it's guarded by a boss.
Find the sphere and the fiends appear.
Ark is the mount you get from the Dawn Trail Collector's Edition, though as a boss, he can't transform. And I know games use a lot of abstraction, but I don't think this is an instance of that. I think this is a smaller version of the actual airship that is placed here to guard the stone. Because if the model was scaled down for the screen, how would we ever hit it, and how would it even fit in here? As for the actual fight, it only has 4 attacks. A physical attack that hits the whole party, a party-wide confuse, a party-wide wind attack that also causes float, though he has nothing that interacts with float that I'm aware of. If anyone can enlighten me, leave a comment. Finally, his only single target attack drops a target to 1 health. And due to the no magic gimmick, you'll be stuck single target healing against all of the raid wides, and if someone drops, stabilizing can quickly spiral out of control. Auto potion does indeed help to mitigate this, but you could run out of potions if you're not careful. This makes the fight legitimately hard. Even if your party is immune to confusion and wind damage, it will still pump out tons of damage. And even when I did beat it, it was a narrow victory. It might be due to my compulsive need to steal everything and having a bit of bad RNG though. After the demonic airship goes down, we can grab the stone and return to Kuja. Swapping back to the castle while Zidane is in the process of returning in shock horror, Kuja lied. And is going to give the remaining party a lava bath if Zidane doesn't return in 10 minutes. And I'm pretty sure the return trip is going to take longer than that, which means it's all up to Sid to rescue everyone with only 6 minutes remaining. And all he has to do is grab the key, which doesn't sound too hard, but Kuja has a guard hog that will scare Sid away if it sees him move. So time to play a game of red light, green light. But the enemy seems to turn at random intervals and can just stare at you for seconds on end. And when you get the keyhole is too high for a frog to reach, so you have to do a secondary puzzle to make a staircase out of the scale. This puzzle is seriously half-baked. All you have to do is put the heaviest pieces on the scale, and could be cut out without losing anything. With the party members rescued from a warm washing, they need to actually get out of the castle, not wanting to rely on Zidane. In this dungeon, you can interact with lights to open up new paths, or allow you to interact with these bloodstones to acquire powerful equipment. After solving some switch puzzles, we head up the final staircase to the exit, but there is a final defense, Valia Pira, and it has a cool mechanic where it starts off the fight by buffing itself in various ways, but every bloodstone you find denies the boss one of its buffs, making your exploration and puzzle solving doubly rewarding. You get both the gear and make the boss more manageable. This boss only casts magic and has no counter for reflect. And no Zidane means you don't need to waste time stealing, so it will go down very quickly. And then the game hits you with a meanwhile after the boss. Zidane has returned and goes to see Kuja in his room alone. Down, Fujoshis. It's not like that. Inside, Kuja shows that the party members we didn't take to Oilvert are knocked out in a cage to make Zidane uphold his end of the bargain. I guess they hit another trap off screen, maybe? But just before Zidane hands over the stone, the full party, except for Aiko, run in, proving that the ones in the cages are fake. Now, are they puppets like the Black Mages, or an illusion, or what? Who knows? But everyone gets distracted by Aiko getting kidnapped, which gives Kuja an opening to yank the stone with telekinesis before teleporting away to his airship, with the party chasing him to the temple of Estogaza on the Blue Narcissus. Well, really the main target is the volcano behind the temple, Mount Golug. After dealing with a couple of ambushes by red dragons, the party spots Kuja and the clowns at the bottom of the volcano, attempting the extraction ritual on Aiko. But she's far too young, and even the clowns show some reservations about putting her life at risk. Though, it is weird that they blame each other since they know that she's not old enough for this. Kuja is having none of it though. He needs a strong Eidolon to stop Terra's plan, even if it kills Aiko. But before the ritual can resume, who should come to the rescue? None other than Mog. Yes, the cowardly one. And then a battle between Aiko and the clowns trigger. But this battle is just Aiko using Mog to summon Medine to one-shot this thorn in our side. Ugh, I can't think of a pun for Zorn. Mog being an Eidolon comes as a shock to Aiko, and much like Yachiru, after revealing her power, Mog is gone, leaving only her ribbon behind. We can't grieve for too long, however, as Kuja ponders that the Moogle used trance, which I guess doesn't disagree with anything Aiko said, but based on what she did say, I have to assume one of three things. Aiko is wrong and Mog wasn't an Eidolon. This is another incorrect translation, or a huge plot hole. I know that Kuja isn't wrong, or at least that his conclusion about anger-inducing trance is correct, because this is key to future events. And if Mog was an Eidolon and this wasn't trance, that's a lucky guess on Kuja's part. Strange writing aside, Kuja dips to find a powerful soul, leaving us to deal with the twins' true form, Melty Gemini. This monstrosity of a boss has an affinity for diseases. As such, he attacks with bio, and can spread venom to your party, which not only acts like stop, it also drains your HP and MP periodically as well, and will count as game over if the entire party is afflicted at the same time. Finally, he can deal non-elemental damage to the entire party while causing virus, which prevents the character from gaining XP or AP. While this boss can be annoying, if you have antibody equipped, he becomes significantly less threatening. After the battle, the Black Mages apologize for helping Kuja, knowing that he was lying about extending their lifespan. And we also just happen to find Hilda down here, and she agrees to tell us everything she knows when we return to Lindblom. After a fade to black, Sid promises he'll never chase other women again, and a classic true love's kiss turns the frog back into a prince. Well, regent. Going back to the conference hall the next day, everyone is gathered except Garnet, so Steiner goes look for the princess. And, oh, when I called her queen earlier, I guess that was incorrect. She never formally ascended. Whoops. But Sid is finally able to start on the Hildegard 3, and Hilda tells us what she knows about Kuja. As it turns out, Terra is a whole other world that Kuja comes from, and there's an island that connects the two planets. But why did Oilvert have a record of Terra's history? Maybe we'll find out later? But the gateway between the two worlds is sealed, and the key to unlocking that seal is in a castle at the north end of the Forgotten Continent. And no one knows the castle's name, so Hilda decides to call it Ibsen's Castle. With the meeting formally concluded, Steiner returns in a panic, saying the princess isn't in the city. Zidane thinks he knows where she is and runs off. However, his instincts are incorrect and she's not in Alexandria either. Although Tantalus does run into Beatrix after some Scooby-Doo chase shenanigans. After getting filled in on the situation, Beatrix tells us to go check the resting place, and if we find her, to pass along both a Garnet Stone and to tell her not to worry about Alexandria and to take care of herself. And lo and behold, there she is. So, technically Zidane wasn't wrong, she just wasn't in the city. And Zidane is shocked to discover the princess can speak again, and she asks if she can continue adventuring for a little while longer, unsure if her people will accept her as queen yet. Then she asks to borrow Zidane's dagger again so she can do this. The classic cut hair to signify character growth. And I guess the airship is finished too. Now that we have an airship, we can freely explore and even autopath to anywhere you have visited before, and Ibsen's castle, because Hilda told us where it is. At the castle's front door, Amaranth does his whole "I work alone" brooding talk, and wants to prove working alone beats the power of friendship by challenging Zidane to a bet that he'll find the key first. Knowing that he won't change his mind, Zidane agrees to the bet. The gimmick to this upside-down castle is that the party's attack is inverted, so big number do small damage. At least the game has a Moogle at the start that sells everyone starting weapons, or you can find them in the chests littered around. This is probably the best way to hint at the gimmick without having someone hit you over the head and go, "Hey, my weak gear seems to be effective here." But Kid Me kinda didn't grasp this and just brute force my way through everything. Eventually, we do run into Amaranth, who has already found the key, which appears to be a world map. He can't figure out what to do with it, but claims victory as he found it first, and leaves us to inspect the map for ourselves. The map in question has 4 mirrors on it, hinting to a location and an element.
Gee, an epic RPG where you gotta collect 4 treasures of the elements. I've never heard that one before.
But before we try to leave with the mirrors, something appears before the party saying the energy flow to Terra has been interrupted. Wanting the mirrors back, this monster attacks, but he has no special tricks or gimmicks, so he falls easily. Meeting up with the rest of the party, they congratulate Zidane on the victory, and he asks what happened to Amaranth, but no one has seen him. So thinking he is still inside, Zidane runs off to go find him. And eventually we do, and he seems to be hurt and is confused as to why we came back to rescue him. And Zidane's answer boils down to, you don't need a reason to help people. But he also sees Amaranth as part of the team, and this seems to convince him, so the two leave together. Zidane tells the party what the mirrors say because only he can read them. And since the boss said all is one, Zidane thinks all 4 locations must be dealt with at the same time, which means everyone has to split up into pairs to tackle each temple. Dagger and Aiko pair up to deal with the Water Shrine. Amaranth and Freya are sent to the Fire Shrine. Steiner and Vivi work together at the Wind Shrine, which leaves Quina to tag along with Zidane for the Earth Shrine. At the center of each shrine is a place to set the mirror, but of course there's a guardian at each one. But instead of fighting each boss, we only have to deal with the one before Zidane and Quina. The boss only has the God level spells, Earthquake, and a physical attack. And if you keep up Reflect and Float, you only have to worry about the physical attack. So this shouldn't be too much of a problem. And with only Zidane and Quina, all of this dialogue should be a hint that you can eat him. You'd have to be pretty stupid not to put 2 and 2 together. And good thing he one-shot my Quina, so I could just pretend I knew about getting Earthshake all along. And remember to cut this out. Now, I'm glad the game isn't going to punish you for not using all of your party members except for Quina, but Zidane can hard carry this fight with Trance in an absolute worst case scenario. But on the other hand, it would have been cool to have a multi-party battle where you're switching between the different perspectives. But these narratively satisfying pair-ups are very unbalanced. Amaranth and Freya are super strong all-rounders, compared to Aiko and Garnet, who are 2 low-damage support characters. But now with the mirrors in place and the party gathered, make sure you do everything you want to do now, because there's no coming back until Disc 4. But when you are ready, it's time to go to the Shimmering Islands and get treated to an FMV. Having arrived in Terra, Garland appears before Zidane and wants him to see the truth of Terra and Zidane's purpose before teleporting away. With only one way forward, the party presses on, finding a local who looks eerily similar to our simian friend who claims this is where he belongs. And then the ground begins to shake as the Invincible rises up from beneath Zidane and Garnet, and this triggers the memories of her home being destroyed, causing her to faint. Steiner offers to take care of the princess so Zidane can focus on finding answers. Seemingly, everyone in Bran Ball has a tail like Zidane, although they talk kind of funny, like they're puppets, and they don't respond to anyone in the party that's not Zidane. With the exception of the girl we met at the town entrance, who tells Aiko to pass along a message. And hey, wait a second, Aiko, where did you learn a word like that? It's kind of convenient that there are beds to lay the princess on if the monkeys don't sleep. But every RPG town needs an inn. But more importantly, Zidane is acting weird because of this blue light. Thankfully, Garnet's fainting spell doesn't last very long, and she tells the party that it was the Invincible that destroyed Medain Sare, not a storm, which makes the party realize that it was the same ship that showed up at the Lifa Tree and Alexandria. With this bombshell revealed, Aiko shows up and conveys the message to Zidane to go to the underground laboratory. Down there, we learn that Zidane and the people here are called genomes, which means this is the place Zidane has been searching for his entire life. Although compared to the soulless genomes here, Zidane was given a greater purpose by Garland. Going back upstairs, the girl tells Zidane that Garland's purpose is to restore the people of Terra by turning Gaia into Terra, and then the souls of the sleeping Terrans will be implanted into the genomes. And after Garland's first attempt at a forceful takeover failed, he needed to gain control of the cycle of souls and prevent them from returning to the planet. And somehow Zidane was made to help with that process. And then the girl leads Zidane to Garland in his floating castle of Pandemonium. Arriving at Pandemonium to confront Garland again, it is revealed that Zidane's role was to disrupt the soul cycle on Gaia, but it hasn't gone according to plan, because another genome that was created was too powerful to be used as a vessel, but instead of discarding him, he was sent to Gaia to further Garland's master plan. And it is none other than Kuja. And yes, Kuja does have a tail, but he hides it, denying his identity. Which in any other JRPG, he would be at least a shonen protagonist in an effort to resist fate and assert his own individuality.
Naruto knows instinctively that believing in yourself can give you the power to change your destiny.
I should have guessed you'd use that shadow clone jutsu. It's your specialty after all.
For the record, I failed the graduation exam 3 times. 'Cause there was this one jutsu that was always on the exam. And it tripped me up every time. It was the one jutsu that I just couldn't master. My clones were pathetic. That's right, I flunked the shadow clone jutsu every time. So don't come whining to me with this destiny stuff. And stop trying to tell me you can't change what you are.
Sin is an inevitable part of Spira's destiny. It is never-ending. Now choose. Who will be your faith? Who will be the one to renew Spira's hope?
No one. I would have gladly died. I live for the people of Spira, and would have gladly died for them, but no more. The final summoning is a false tradition that should be thrown away. I will live with my sorrow. I will live my own life. I will defeat sorrow in his place. I will stand my ground and be strong. I don't know when it will be, but someday I will conquer it. And I will do it without false hope.
This is it. Now is the time to choose. Die and be free of pain, or live and fight your sorrow. Now is the time to shape your stories. Your fate is in your hands.
I'm not dying a Fal'Cie slave.
However, in his crusade against Garland, causing war and chaos to produce black mages, he is still furthering Garland's plan, which is why he never stepped in until the summoning of Alexander. And on the second draft of the script, I had a realization. Zidane's backstory is similar to Goku's.
Kakarot was given specific orders to clear this world of its current inhabitants, a mission which he has failed miserably. We scour space for planets that will bring a high price on the galactic market. Once we find them, we send our warriors there to purge them of any life.
Both were sent to another planet to cause or wage war on it, so the home planet can take it over. Which makes it even funnier that both are monkey-like and have a transformation that gives them full body fur and is red-colored. The difference being, when Zidane was born, Kuja felt threatened and discarded Zidane on Gaia to be destroyed with the rest of the planet. But how does Garland plan on sorting the souls and removing them from the cycle? The Life Tree. Mist is the souls of Gaia not being returned to the planet naturally, and even after we stop the tree, it is still blocking the souls of Gaia from returning. Finally, Garland has an observatory that measures the balance of souls between the two planets, and once the blue is completely faded, there will be no more Gaia, only Terra, with one final bombshell being that Kuja, the Angel of Death, was only meant to last until Zidane came of age, where he would then take over Kuja's role. And with the truth finally revealed, Zidane rejects Garland, but he does something to Zidane which causes him to collapse so he can be turned back into a regular genome. And then we cut back to Kuja, who is returned to Terra now that we have broken the seal, with the Invincible looming forebodingly in the background. Sometime later, Zidane wakes up to one of the best moments of the game. Zidane has lost his sense of self, finding it hard to think, and even when someone calls out his name, he can't snap out of this daze. This is probably what the other genomes are going through, since Vivi had earlier said that their minds aren't hollow. Due to whatever Garland did, Zidane views himself as an empty vessel. However, Zidane does eventually wake up to Aiko and Vivi, but being an enemy of Gaia,
enemy's a cocoon.
Zidane wants to deal with Garland himself and brushes past them even in his weakened state. This leads into a gauntlet of mini-bosses where the party members show up one after another to help and try and get through to Zidane, but he keeps denying their outstretched hands. Until finally Garnet shows up and talks some sense into him. If they are truly friends, he should be able to lean on them just as they do for him. And I'm a huge sucker for this kind of trope, that even if he is being self-destructive, the hero's friends will keep trying to pull them out of whatever darkness they find themselves in. But what makes this peak cinema is when Steiner shows up, he admits that their bond is so close, the Rusty Knight would follow Zidane to the afterlife should it come to that. It's also really nice to show that no matter how competent someone is, there are times that when they too need help. But now that he's back in his right mind, he makes sure to go back and grab the kids before confronting Garland together. And now it's time to pay back what I said near the start of the video. Unlike Tantalus, who tried to cheer up Zidane but eventually went to go hang out with Ruby, the party members never once gave up on Zidane here. Granted, Zidane moping about a broken heart isn't nearly as serious. It is a neat dichotomy between the start and end of the disc. With apologies behind us, it's time to do the dungeon proper. This first room has you flip a switch, and then you have to get through it within 30 seconds. What makes this hard is that if you go near any of the lights, you are sent into battle and are going to have to try again. At least the path is the same every time, so once you realize it, navigating through is simple enough. Just, this was all intentional grinding. Yep, totally. The last room has you hitting these warp pads to change your elevation, and you'd think with a pre-rendered background this might be a pain, but thanks to some smart design, it's very intuitive. There's some pretty good shading to show what is above what. Like, for example, this 3-stack might be hard to navigate without the shadows, showing that the red pad goes past the blue one. Additionally, the blue and red pads are colored such that blue goes to blue and red goes to red. But passing through this maze leads us to Garland, where he talks about how life and death are the same thing with flowery language, blah blah. This must be where Kuja gets it from. But when Terra awakens, they will have transcended life and death, since they will reside in immortal genome vessels. However, something seems to be missing, I guess? Garland's whole monologue here is about life and death, so when the party refutes his reasoning with comments on the meaning of strength, it just seems like the two sides are having two different conversations. Garland responds to the party by calling down a silver dragon. The dragon primarily deals with wind-based attacks, so slap on some wind resistance and you're good to go. Though I'm not sure why it started off doing hundreds of damage, only to start doing 2k or more. Maybe a softened rage or something? Or crits? I get damage variance is a thing, but this seems like a wide spread. But whatever. When the dragon goes down, we get our fight with Garland, with no chance to change equipment or rest. Garland can do a lot of damage, but everything he has is single target. But as long as you have locomotion equipped, you can avoid his most dangerous spell. And when Garland is defeated, Kuja shows up in the Invincible, giving him the power to control souls, and then comes down to challenge us to a fight. This makes for the third boss in a row with no respite. Kuja spends most of the battle casting Thundaga or Demi, with his most powerful and iconic attack being locked behind your party having Reflect or attacking his MP. Individually, each of these bosses isn't that difficult to counter, with the difficulty being front-loaded in the dragon. But because you can't change your skills or equipment between each fight, you need to pick and choose how much you want to counter each boss with a limited pool of skills and equipment. And eventually, Kuja also gets defeated, but even when he loses, he still wins. The party somehow survives this attack, and Kuja reveals that he used the souls that were absorbed by the Invincible from Madain Saray, Alexandria, and the Lifa Tree. And yes, this does include the previous queen.
This is Sparta!
After kicking Garland to his death and gloating about his eternal castle, the voice of Garland cuts this joy short. Which enrages Kuja, not realizing he was going to stop soon, like the black mages he always mocked. And so, not wanting the world to exist without him, he starts to attack everything intending to destroy Terra. This diverts his attention from the party so they can take the airship and escape with the genomes, leaving Kuja to destroy the entire planet. Returning to Gaia, the mist has returned and is now covering the entire planet as the screen fades to black and tells you to insert disc 4. The final disc opens sometime later after the genomes have started to settle in with the black mages. And being the final disc, all that is left to do is clean up any incomplete side quests before returning to the Lifa Tree to stop Kuja. Oh, the other genome that was our tour guide in Bran Bal is named Mikoto. But also, I want to mention before heading out that it's so adorable seeing the black mages as the more mature ones trying to teach the genomes things. Arriving at the tree, Kuja has employed an army of dragons to defend it, but our friends from Lindblom and Alexandria arrive to help carve a path, leaving us to fight only a singular dragon. This bad boy is strong. It has access to powerful wind and water-based attacks that attack the entire party, with an even higher damage physical attack and a counter. And even though he is weak to silence, his spells will still go off. But with the guard dog behind us, the party finds themselves in a strange area and Garland speaks to Zidane. as we climb the ever-growing castle of Memoria, we run into Merilith, one of the Chaos Guards, as a random encounter. I say random encounter, but this is a proper boss fight, meaning no experience and you can't run. It might be a gut punch, you're essentially getting ambushed by a boss fight, but I think it's a cool way to convey the danger of this area. You're never safe, and you could be attacked by bosses at any time. The gimmick with this boss is that she will keep up Reflect and deal heavy physical and fire damage to a single target, and occasionally will inflict heat. I brought up what it does in part 1, but I really like this status effect as it punishes you for mashing and is designed around the A and the ATB, whereas Stop or Petrify just prevents you from taking actions until it's cured. Upon defeat, Merilith has a final gambit to try and take the party down with her. But because these kind of self-destructs never work, the party presses on and gets to relive Alexandria getting attacked by Bahamut. Except that Quina doesn't see anything because they weren't in Alexandria when this happened and have no memory of it. So when Zidane can also see the next memory of Garnet fleeing Madain Saray as a child, she is confused. But Garland affirms that this was his memory, not hers. Another less than random encounter kicks off before we can get any answers. This one is Tiamat, which makes it apparent we will get to fight the 3 guardians we skipped in the previous disc. This multi-headed dragon attacks with both wind and fire, casts heat on the entire party, and actually has a soft enrage by stealing your attack and magic as the fight goes on. He can also cast Float on someone, but unlike Ark, who has no reason to do so, if someone under the effect of Float physically attacks Tiamat, he will counter by ejecting them from combat. So yeah, sure, you could just not physically attack. That's easy enough.
Not this time.
His basic attack applies silence, and he can absorb your MP, leaving you with no other options. This is the kind of difficulty I'd like to see out of an RPG. Just a cohesive move pool that punishes you for being too defensive. After taking down the second Guardian, the next thing we see is 2 planets colliding together. The next major memory puts us in the ocean, but we'll come back here later. What is really important about this memory is that after we go up the stairs, we realize that this is some point after the failed fusion when Gaia was still covered in water. A water world, one might say. Except for the few structures of terror that are still standing. And of course, it's here where we run into the water guardian, Kraken. He's not really anything to write home about. He can freeze a target, which means the next physical attack will shatter them, but his only physical attack is a counter. Once his health gets low, he'll begin spamming Water Gun on the entire party. And at this point, between that and the counters, things can spiral out of control. This guy looks familiar. I can't really place my finger on it, but I know I've seen this guy before somewhere else. I'm sure it's just my imagination. And with 3 of the Guardians down, all that's left is a stronger version of the one we already fought, Lich. This time, he can end battles with Venom, Stop, Doom, Death, and even has level 5 Death, which will hit the entire party if their level is a multiple of 5. Even with immunity to Venom and Stop, and using Float to negate his Earth attacks, he is easily the most dangerous. Without a Tranced Amaranth throwing out AoE auto life, I don't think this would have been a one-shot. And if you can beat him with your playtime being under 12 hours, there's a chest right here with Steiner's ultimate weapon. And this is by far the dumbest weapon requirement in this franchise. And that does include the lightning dodging in Final Fantasy X or the Zodiac Spear in 12. The spear is made to push the strategy guide, sure, but at least it doesn't punish you for enjoying the game. But with all that behind us and walking through space, yes, space, we finally arrive at the truth of why we have these memories. And okay, this explains why Quina couldn't see the memory about Alexandria. He was alive when it happened. But Zidane is older than Garnet, so her escaping Madain Saray happened after Zidane was born. So I have no idea how the crystal would have that memory to pass it down to him. Of course, Kuja is here and wants to destroy the crystal, ending life on Gaia as well. Kuja summons a Death Geist to fight the party before we can deal with him. This thing doesn't play around, opening the fight with Meteor that does 50 times up to 90 damage to the entire party, making the damage cap at 4,500. And then it alternates between two phases. In the first phase, the boss attacks the party with powerful physical attacks. In the other phase, he uses Death, Level 5 Death, and Twister. But when it finally goes down, this marks your absolute last chance to finish off any of the side content you still want to do before the final boss. Trans Kuja isn't trying to lose this time, and has access to Flare and Holy for single target damage, and Flare Star for AoE. He is also smart enough not to attack into Reflect, and Flare Star ignores the buff. And defensively, he will cast Reflect on himself occasionally, and when low on health he will cast Kiraga and start using Flare Star as a counter. And when Kuja is on the verge of defeat, he unleashes Ultima once again and ends the fight by destroying both the crystal and the party.
Such devastation! This was my intention!
And this is probably my favorite thing about Kuja. He's never actually defeated by the party. And I know it's a very common Final Fantasy thing of having the main antagonist have a I want to remove suffering by ending all life plan.
Death is a sweet slumber. All the pain of life is gently swept away. Ah, yes. So you see, if all life were to end in Spira, all suffering would end. Don't you see?
Kuja doesn't have any grand design of removing some negative aspect of life. He's just a narcissist that can't imagine a world without him. But the game can't actually end with the heroes defeated, so Kuja's Ultima sent them to the final dimension.
Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering.
Now this guy is the classic Final Fantasy motivation. And Necron does come out of nowhere with no foreshadowing, but I like that the party have all been searching for the meaning of life in their own way, and Necron is the antithesis of everything we have learned up until now. And this is the only time Zidane doesn't need to be in the party, which makes this achievement possible. Is it because Quina is an enigma, or is it because cooking is a woman's thing? Welcome to Kawaii's Kitchen. But with the party selected and gear and abilities set up, it's time for the final battle of the game. And this fight can either be a cakewalk or an exercise in futility depending on the RNG of Grand Cross, his signature ability. And it targets the entire party with a chance to apply any and every status ailment in the game, and also may reduce your health to critical levels. But unlike Sephiroth, who has a set move rotation, Necron affords you no such comfort. This can be either mildly annoying or run-ending every time he uses it. He also has all of the god level spells, Meteor, and his blue shockwave drops a single target down to 1 health. And he also has Shell, Protect, and Kiraga. Oh, and he has a chance to use multiple actions in one turn. But one Zidane translator and... Yep, he's just like Sephiroth.
I will never be a memory.
With Kuja and Necron taken care of, the party is returned to Gaia and the Life Tree starts going berserk. Kuja also survived, or maybe Kuja did actually take himself out along with the crystal and the party, but the defeat of Necron undid most of what Kuja did. Because as a kid, I had always assumed the party members you didn't select gave up their lives to restore the ones going to fight Necron. But regardless, with Kuja still being alive, Zidane tells the party to go on without him, and he goes back to the tree alone. Kinda wild that Final Fantasy IX has an FF16 reference in it like this. But when they meet up, Zidane and Kuja just have a chat. It might not make sense why Zidane would go to try and save Kuja after everything he's done, but it fits in perfectly with Zidane's way of life. You don't need a reason to help people, and the tree presumably kills them. Now that everything is calmed down, there's a nice epilogue that explains what all the characters are up to, though strangely no explanation as to what happened with the tree. But whatever, out of sight, out of mind. And the game ends just as it began, with Tantalus performing I Want to Be Your Canary. And at the end, Zidane reveals himself and confesses to Garnet. And that was Final Fantasy IX, and it is still my favorite single-player Final Fantasy even after countless replays. The game can effortlessly juggle a playful, lighthearted tone, but also tell Vivi's story with all the gravitas it requires without getting bogged down by pessimism. And it's not in the remasters, so I didn't mention it until now. But on the original version, you could slap a multitap in your PlayStation and play 4-player multiplayer. The game isn't perfect, but nothing is. Like, the reveal that Zidane is Kuja's brother only works because when they meet in Disc 1, Kuja acts like he doesn't know him. And some minor translation issues add some small plot holes and change up character motivations. And about difficulty, there are a few more bosses that required more planning than I remembered, without demanding that you grind levels. Though, the difficulty curve is still a little slow. But then you hit Memorial and boom, huge spike. Oh, speaking of bosses, I learned you don't need to do anything special to fight Hades, so I'm gonna go fight the super boss for the first time. I hear he drops good loot, so let's check it out by going back to the ocean in Memoria. This boss can inflict both freeze and heat, so dress accordingly, and can instantly drop someone's health to 1 on a whim. Also, his generic attack hits the entire party. The main gimmick with this boss is that after a while, he will raise his sword and begin powering it up to alternate between his 2 biggest attacks, Curse and Doomsday. Curse inflicts random status effects like Grand Cross, and Doomsday does massive shadow damage to all standing or sitting combatants. And since Hades heals from Shadow, that's pretty dangerous. Though, sadly, I don't have footage of either of these because I ended the fight before seeing it go off. But I did see a trick to beat this boss at level 1 by using Charge, so not being blind might be why I one-shot him. Oh, I don't know what this is. Let's check his shop and let's synthesize this, and... Oh, that's not at all what I was expecting. But if it was a gift, I have to play it. So until next time when we go over Grandia,